I want to introduce briefly Cheryl Hercus. I mentioned earlier, Cheryl is working on a book and she's interviewing a lot of feminist women and women who support biological reality who are experiencing political homelessness at the moment. I wouldn't actually go that far. I don't feel politically homeless because I think the women's liberation movement is enough politics for me, but I have no one to vote for, and last federal election I voted informally in a planned way because there was no one for me to vote for. Cheryl's working on a book about all of us. Thanks, Cheryl.
Just wanted, before I talk about my project, just to say thank you to Anna and the women who have spoken already this morning. Narissa just talked about hoping that women are re-energised by events by this event, and that's exactly what it does. I think it just, all of you, Nina's singing and your wonderful creative story, the creativity of all the stories and the stuff. It's just absolutely brilliant. Now, okay, so my background is I'm another sociologist like Helen, and but from 2010 until about 2018, I was very heavily involved in the Greens in Victoria, in Melbourne. And I was actually even a candidate for the Greens in 2016. And if any of you have been following what's happening in the Greens in Victoria, it's really dire with regard to this, the push from the trans activists. And I started to come up against this around about 2017. I would put some post some things to my Facebook page, and I was in the queer Greens too, and I'd get this pushback. And then in 2018 there was this move within the Greens to expel members who were critical of gender ideology, and I met some of the fabulous other members who were fighting this at that time. But just to speed things up, you ought all know what happened at the Let Women Speak rally in Melbourne on the 18th of March. So with the neo-Nazis turning up. But what enraged me, and Helen, I love what you were talking about, how this just the rage we feel at this. When I saw on Twitter what Daniel Andrews, the Premier, Labor Premier, and particularly what Adam Bandt, the leader of the Greens, was saying on Twitter and smearing all of us, all of the women who are fighting this as, Nazi adjacent, as fascists and whatever, and totally buying the lies that the trans activists have been pushing for 30 years. It's not new. They've been calling us fascists and trying to tar us as right-wing, extreme right for years and years. So I thought, something I'd been thinking about ever since I basically left the Greens. I left Melbourne, moved to live in Lismore in northern New South Wales in 2019, and I just didn't rejoin the Greens, and I let my membership lapse. I had actually also gone through a dispute. I'd had one of the I call them the boys in dresses, who'd raised a dispute within the Greens to try to have me expelled in, I think that was 2018. And I knew that I wasn't the only one. And I'm in contact with a number of ex-Greens or current Greens. I know that there's women who were in the Animal Justice Party who have been fell foul of all of this gender ideology. So I decided that night, reading all the tweets from Adam Bandt, the disgusting tweets, and then 300 or so comments, most of whom were pushing back on him, I thought, this is it, I've got to do it. I'm enjoying retirement, I have a van, I travel, I've got my puppy, I go to the beach, I go to the gym. And I think, Cheryl, get off your, not get off it, do something that you can do. And so I'm trying to network and contact and speak to as many people. They're not all women in the Greens in Victoria. There's some men who are also facing being expelled from the party. But the working title of the book is Politically Homeless. Progressive pushing back on gender ideology, something like that. I thought the term politically homeless because that comment was coming up time and again in the comments to Adam Bant. People saying, I've voted Greens for the last 10 years, I've handed out at, on elections and all of this, and now I'm politically homeless. I do take your point, Anna, that in another respect, we're not politically homeless, but who do we vote for? It's just awful. So basically, if anyone if you're in that boat, or if you know other people, put them in touch with me. I've got a set of questions, and I'm going to, hold me to it. I've got one good friend in Melbourne, and I said, Karen, you've just got to ring me every so often and say, Cheryl, have you worked on the book today? Because another thing about me, I once did actually go through the whole process of getting diagnosed. I do have attention deficit disorder. I don't take anything for it, but I do sometimes find it hard to make myself focus. But I will try and get this actually done, because it needs to come out. It needs to be done quickly. Yeah.
Are you writing only in the Australian context? Or?
I will only be. I'm not actually going to probably physically interview, although if there are some people who would prefer to say do a telephone interview rather than do written answers. But I will write about the context that's global, because as many of you would know, the Greens in the UK are in a mess over this. I think there's Greens in the US and other places. So I would describe that context, but in terms of sort of the research part of it and talking to people and getting their stories, only Australia. And I know already I've got contact with women in Perth, North Queensland, all over.
Thanks, Cheryl, and I suspect there'll be a few women from today who will be a part of Cheryl's book. That brings to a close the video part of our program. We'll break now for lunch, and then we'll have